are sensitive and vulnerable to this thing called consciousness, and all of us are rising in consciousness. And sooner or later, that little critical moment, that seed will sprout inside of us and inside of you if you still haven't felt this. And suddenly you wake up and you say, I can no longer do this. And there are thousands of bankers around the world and people in positions of power and control. They know they're abusing other people in their lives and around them. They know they're making their children's friends' lives miserable. They know that they're possibly causing death and destruction to the parents of the friends of their children that they go to school with. And this is when they wake up and say, I can no longer do this, because the consciousness has suddenly sprouted in their hearts and in their souls. And this is what's bringing such a rapid change around throughout, that's spreading across this planet so quickly that it is unstoppable and uncontainable. There's something that nobody will be able to stop, is this explosion and the rise of consciousness within the global population. The global and historic resistance to money goes back thousands of years. There are some brilliant examples. Julius Caesar is one of them, 48 BC. Julius Caesar already took back from the money changers the power to coin money, and he minted coins for the benefit of all, for the people of Rome. And with this new plentiful money supply, he established many massive construction and public projects and made Rome a powerful place. He went against the wishes of the bankers, and we all know what happened to Julius Caesar, right? In 1225, St. Thomas Aquinas exposes us to an interesting bit of history regarding the church and money. And this I find quite fascinating, where the charging of interest was actually wrong because it applies to the double charging. This is what the church believed in the 1200s. It says the charging for both the money and the use of money was wrong. And the church law in the Middle Ages in Europe actually forbade the charging of interest on loans and even made it a crime called usury. And this is the system that we find ourselves in today. And it continues, the resistance, one of the most famous acts of Jesus, whoever this character may have been, because obviously there's a lot of research that's gone on about who this individual called Jesus was, whether it was Jesus or Jeshua or Issa, so many names that he may have appeared under. The one historic event that is quite famous in the life of Jesus is when he threw the bankers out of the temple. So it shows us that even someone like Jesus is showing us that bankers were committing crimes against the people, and they were using the temple as their bank. This is a very important bit of information, because therein lies encoded a very important subliminal message. Bankers and temples are synonymous, and we'll find out more about that later. Here in the United States, the historical statement by Thomas Jefferson is just spectacular. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allowed private banks, and the emphasis here is on private banks, not people's banks or banks owned by governments or governments of the people. So if the American people ever allowed private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. And this is exactly what we find ourselves in today, in every country of the world. I don't particularly like the idea of a continent being conquered by our forefathers, because that means that we deprive traditional people of their land. So this is a whole other issue. But the sentiment about the banking institution is a very important and critical one for us to take in and understand how important these words by Thomas Jefferson were, because this is the situation that has evolved and developed. And I'd like to say that the War of Independence in the United States and all the wars that were fought around that era were all about the control of the money and the central banks of the United States. One of the most important events in recent United States history, or global history, was the assassination of JFK. And it's very obviously, once you do research, this was all perpetrated by the banking families, the banking elite, the largest organized crime syndicate in the world. JFK had issued the United States notes just months before he was assassinated. His biggest problem, or his biggest mistake, was he did not make this public. Just like his famous speech to the Press Association or the Press Club, where he talks about secret societies and people dealing in secret rooms and doing secret things, he wasn't specific enough about that. And then he goes and releases the United States note that he took the right away from the Federal Reserve to print this money. No wonder they took the guy out. And they blame it on some guy, that was trained by Russians and the magic gun. It's just crazy. When you realize how the banking elite have orchestrated pretty much all of the historic events, the turning points in history. The further back in time you go, once you know this, and once it becomes very clear to you that this is how they've run and manipulated the world, if they can assassinate the most visible and questionably, arguably, the most popular president in the history of this planet, they can assassinate him live on television in front of the world, these guys will do everything and anything. They've murdered, killed, raped, tortured thousands of people to stay in control. Once we know this, we know what to do about it. The game is up. The cat's out of the bag. There are too many people. This information is spreading around the world so quickly it can no longer be contained. And this is what we have to count on. We are the 99.99%. The elite that think they run the world, the game is over. The behavior, the draconian behavior that we see on the news day in, day out, the fear-mongering, the lies, the terror that's imposed on humanity all the time using the media as their tool, this is not the behavior of an elite who are in control. This is clearly the behavior of an elite who feel trapped and caged, and they're doing everything and anything to get out of this. They're trying to hang on to power and control for dear life because they know the game is up. So I'd like you to feel reassured with this. Don't think that things are getting bad. Things are getting better. It's just currently the behavior. Stop watching the news, stop reading the papers. Once you stop watching that and the terror tactics and the agenda of the elite through the media, you realize how beautiful and peaceful the world is. It's just being manipulated. And many of the things that we see on television are false flag events, are orchestrated, are staged, are not real events.